We are live with Peter Holland and my younger brother, Nicholas Alexander Karadza. And you brought up the Leafs. Peter Holland is here.
No, hold on. To be fair, I said, if we're going to start with the Leafs, I'm leaving. That's what I said, just to be
You're
clear.
You're a Leafs fan.
No, I am, but I can't.
Sounds like there's some war wounds there.
Emotionally, I can't handle it anymore.
Scars.
I mean, I need, for this year, I need to block out the whole season until April. That's the goal.
So wait, we'll just start. So Peter, for those who don't know, you played for the Leafs. The years were, if I have them right, 2013, beginning of 2013, 2017.
Yeah, right around the end of 2016. So I got traded. So I was drafted originally to the Anaheim Ducks. I played about 2.5 years with them, mostly with their minor league system. It was my second year was a weird one because it was the lockout year. So basically everybody was forced down to the American League, and then obviously the guys who were established NHL, or some of them went over to Europe. But the first half of that entire season was with the American League, but the league was actually really good that year because there was a lot of guys similar
Sure, playing in it that weren't supposed to
be playing in it, right? And a lot of guys that have gone on to be stars, obviously. Braden Shen, Naz Kadri, those guys were all down there at that time. Anyway, the lockout ended. I got called up to Anaheim for the majority of what was a shortened, I think it was about 42-game schedule. I played in roughly half of them, sat in the press box for another 10 or 15, and then was bouncing around up and down between the minors the rest of the time there. But after my third training camp the following season, on an entry-level contract, you're more or less supposed to make the team by your third year, especially as a first-rounder, which I was. And things didn't go according to plan. So they were actively looking to move me. I got traded to the Leafs early November, I think it was. And I joined up with them. I played with the Leafs for about 3 years, and that was an absolute blast. I spent a little bit of time with the Marlies my first season, more so in the playoffs. Obviously, we didn't make the postseason when I was with the big club, but I went down my first year.
Let's not talk about any postseason stuff with the Leafs, okay, Peter?
But I never even got.
We just talked regular season here, okay?
I would have just enjoyed to be part of one of those masters, whatever. But my time with the Marlies was great. We had a really fun group of guys. That was probably, looking back on it, funny enough, one of the best times I had playing hockey.
Because of that group.
Yeah, just because of that group. Like it was a group where no one wanted to leave the rink. It was like, you'd show up extra early for practice. You'd have a blast doing your workout. You'd have a blast doing your practice. And then guys would just be hanging around the room till like 3, 4 in the afternoon.
Cool.
Which is not normal. Like a typical schedule for a pro hockey player is you get to the rink around 8 or 8:30 in the morning. Typically practice, you're on the ice around 10 or 10:30. So there's an off-ice workout in there, maybe some special teams meetings or whatever, just regular team meetings. But once practice ends, guys pretty quick hit the showers, grab a bite to eat, and then they're out. But this group was just like, what else can we do in the room today?
Yeah, that's cool.
And then when you left the room, it was like, okay, where are we going for dinner?
Yeah, that's cool. I'm sure there were some players when you were playing at AHL level and NHL level, there's got to be some personalities in there that think they rule the club too, and the club rotates around them. You know how it
That's
is.
every environment.
That must,
guess.
yeah. No,
but I think that's what gives credence to having a group like that.
That's what made that so special.
Yeah, because you can play on teams where it's cliquey, or there's certain personalities in the room that maybe don't jive, and that sort of creates barriers around the dressing room. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So who's your coach then? When you were at the Marlies, was that Dallas Eakins then?
No, I had Steve Spott.
Oh, okay. That was
I'm trying to think who was the goalie for the Marlies then. Was that Pope?
We had we had Drew McIntyre.
Oh,
I believe.
Okay, got it.
I want to say maybe he played a couple games with the big club, but for the most part, he was just a lifer.
And when you were playing with the Leafs, who was the goalie for your era?
We had Reimer and Bernier.
Oh, the Reimer Bernier.
Yeah.
Dude, I liked Bernier. Everyone else around me. Reimer had the better personality. I just thought Bernier had positionally better was goalie. That's a running joke. That's a running
Reimer
joke.
conversation.
The Reimer,
Tom
I'm a huge. No, I like Reimer as a person. His style. I don't know. I didn't know what to make of his style. It was anyway. You're tired of Leaf fan telling you for this stuff, but that was an interesting goalie tandem for us.
And who was your coach then?
Well, we had a few.
Yeah.
So were you there? It was Ron Wilson years?
No. I was post Ron Wilson years. So when I got there, it was Randy Carlisle, which was actually interesting.
I forgot about Carlisle. That's what I was looking for.
Because he was the head coach in Anaheim when I was originally drafted.
Oh, so that doesn't help you, I'd imagine, if he didn't want you up before.
Well,
right?
it did and it didn't, because he would have been part of sort of the internal group with Anaheim that would have watched scouting videos and been sort of a part of that process when they drafted me. I didn't make the team, obviously, in Anaheim when he was still coaching, but he was there. I think, at the time I scored my first NHL goal. So first couple games as a young guy. But so we had Randy first, and then we had Peter Hordachuk took over.
Oh,
he was a temporary guy.
Yeah.
He was a temp guy.
I
who
forgot.
came in, and I mean, that season was a nightmare. I think we had like 45 different guys wear the Leaf jersey that season. And there was like something like, maybe 45 is a bit of an exaggeration, but it was over 30. And we had something like 10 guys make NHL debuts.
I remember that season.
It was just
That
a
was
really
crazy.
strange.
That felt like they were. Remember, it was like,
At the
what's
end
going
there,
on?
yeah,
Are they
yeah.
just trying to tank this team, or what's happening here?
Yeah. And then obviously I played a year and a half with Babcock, or two.
Oh shit,
Yeah.
Babcock.
So
Holy
I got the full spectrum.
You got a, you got a lot of
I
variety.
won't even bring up our debates about Babcock.
Well, now you have to.
Well, yeah. Nick thinks Babcock's the best to coach.
No,
ever.
I never
And
said that.
I didn't like Babcock's style from day one.
No, you blamed their results on. It was like coaching. I'm like, I think it's more than coaching. But there were some decisions.
I was very fair. I thought the coaching, I really didn't respond to the type of coaching.
Yeah.
I could just tell. I was like, these guys, I
just
know.
always
I can't
thought-
speak for the room. I don't know what was going on in
Yeah.
the room. I'm just like, this guy doesn't have the team. This is old school.
I just
coaching.
thought it was
And I
more.
remember his years in Detroit where I'm like, well, with that many good players in Detroit, I could have won the Stanley Cup as a coach. No, seriously. And they won one cup. And I felt then all that, I don't know about, I'm sure he's a nice person. But as a coach,
Well, from some of the stories, it didn't.
I was just trying to end it off on-
We don't have to
His
put.
wife and kids might agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to
There
say
we
we
go.
don't need you. We
Yeah.
didn't.
Just trying to spare you from getting in on our own conversations on this.
Well, the Marner story that came out with what he did with Marner, that one came out about how he had to write down like what was it, like the 10 people, rank in order who you think tries the hardest or the best players in the team or something, whatever that came out.
It was like, which guys do you think work the hardest in
Yeah.
the gym? And obviously there was a couple of the leaders on the team who were ranked at the bottom end of that list.
And then didn't he read it in front of the whole room?
Yeah, he like publicized it. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Then obviously Mitchie was in a weird position.
Of course, yeah.
Young guy.
I mean, I was hanging on by a thread at that point, so I wasn't like too focused on some of the exterior stuff that was going on. But obviously looking back on it, that was a pretty crazy.
But how do you do that? So a new young guy coming onto the team, you put him in that position?
Yeah.
Well, and I think
indirectly you're saying I was right about Babcock.
No, but I was talking about.
But I
other
even
things.
think to Bab's credit, which I don't like to hand out, but to his credit, I even think he backtracked on that, and he was like, "Well, maybe I should have done that."
Okay.
Okay.
You realized it.
Yeah.
So then you moved up because you had I don't know. I would call them. I don't know how you would call those years, but I thought they were some good years as a Leaf. And then what happened? You left the Leafs.
Are you talking personally or as a team? Because as a team, it was a bit of a tire fire.
No, personally. No, didn't you? Because you had a couple years there. You were scoring 10. I don't know.
Yeah, my best year, I think I had 11 goals and just under 30 points.
Yeah, so you're scoring goals in the NHL. This is a big deal.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about it.
Yeah. So then what happened from there? I don't know if you want to relive this or not. But because after the Leafs, what happened? The Leafs didn't sign you again?
Well, so what ended up happening eventually with Babs is I started to get taken out of the lineup more consistently. So obviously I was trying to fight my way back into the lineup. And typically the way Babs would do it would be if the team lost, he would switch up a player or two and work guys in and out. And then there started to become a pattern where the team was losing and he wasn't switching the lineup. And so then I was trying to have meetings with him to go into his office, like not consistently, but
You just were trying to request that with them?
well, no, I don't know if request is
Or just
the
trying to catch him?
word, but yeah, just trying to have a conversation and just say, hey, I feel like I can help the team. And, I've been working my butt off in practice and, these are the areas I think I can help in. I think, at the time it was like I'm decent on the power play or, I'm putting some effort in on the penalty kill in practice or, whatever it was at that time. But I mean, those meetings obviously didn't go very far and it just kind of felt like the writing was on the wall. And I was never, I'm not someone who's good at just sort of sitting on the sidelines and being patient. And it just really felt like the writing was on the wall for me there in Toronto and was looking for a change just to get back to playing. And a trade came down. Lou traded me to Arizona in December.
Oh, yeah, that was Lou years.
Yeah,
Huh.
it was Lou, the Shanna plan, Lou Lamoriello, Babcock.
Yeah.
Trying to turn the tide in Toronto. Anyway, I got traded to Arizona in December of that year. And it's funny the way hockey works, man, because 2 weeks later after my trade, Arizona was scheduled to play in Toronto. And that was only my second or third game with the club. It's bad that I can't
Oh, wow.
remember.
You're already back.
I was already back, and just the way things work, the game went to a shootout. And
Oh, shit.
No.
No,
And-
did you? I forget this.
game goes to a
Oh,
shootout,
shit, man.
and Dave
Why is that?
Tippett, who was the coach of Arizona, so our first 2 shooters have gone.
Yeah.
He comes down the bench.
He
He's like,
knew.
"Hey, Holly, how are you in the shootout?" I was like, "Well, I'm not doing so well this year, but historically I've been pretty good. I think the one season, either the one prior to that or the one before that, I was like top 5 in the league for shootouts." So he goes, "Okay, you're our third shooter," and sure enough, the game's on my stick. If I score, we win. So I go down on Freddie Anderson, bury a backhand 5-hole, win the game. I'm all pumped up. The boys are all pumped up for me. And then I think the media asked Babs in the post-game interview something about me scoring the goal, and he's like, "Oh, I missed it. I think he whiffed on the shot or something like that."
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
That's definitely something he would have said. Yeah, that's cool though. That's awesome the way that worked out.
No, you know what?
'Cause it
I know
was-
I'm
as a
happy
player,
for
that's
Peter.
great.
Yeah, but as a Leafs fan, that's happened so many times to us that it's not even fun. I'm happy for Peter individually.
Are you
But as a
saying
Leafs fan,
Anderson
I'm not
couldn't?
even
Are you saying
surprised.
Anderson couldn't make the big
I
save
was
in your
also
opinion?
not a huge Anderson fan. I said steady Freddie's great in the regular season, but let's win some playoffs.
That's okay. Now we got more millions than ever tied up in goalies that we're not sure can do anything.
I mean, the culture there now, I feel is like, yeah, I don't know what it is now.
Well, the goalie culture there's a coin toss.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll see. They're going to be good.
Yeah.
They got a
Yeah.
lot of great people.
Matthews is going to
let's
score
ask-
250 goals this
Only
year.
one of us here played in the NHL. Let's ask Peter what he thinks. What are your?
Well, he might
predictions?
not want. I'm not asking him specifically because maybe he doesn't want to actually say.
No, of course.
I mean,
He's
really-
he's a Leafs alumni. Yeah, you're right. You probably get invited. You do get invited.
Actually,
back yeah, that's right.
what's pretty cool about the Leafs alumni, so we got the box, right? So you get to go to the Leafs alumni suite and watch some games. And so last year was obviously the first year that I used it. And I got to go, my first time using it was against Detroit when Matthews got his 2 goals for his 60th of the season,
Oh, nice.
Crazy.
which was pretty cool. And then I got to go for game 1 of the playoffs against Tampa when the Leafs played a phenomenal.
And we were there for Game 5,
Oh,
which was
great.
a crazy
Yeah.
game. Yeah, but Game 1.
Well, game 1 was crazy too because there was that big scrum towards the end of the game as well, and I was sitting in the alumni box and like my hairs are standing up, and I'm like, "Oh, I missed this,"
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. The Leafs alumni is a pretty close network of guys, and I'm actually playing in their alumni golf tournament this week too. So that'll
Oh,
be
that's
fun.
Yeah, that's a great
nice.
network, I'm sure, locally for you, for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to sort of getting involved more with that.
And then if you had to guess now, how do you think their season's going to be this year? Just random prediction. What
It's
do you think?
so hard to say because they go to Game 7 with Tampa last year.
I know.
And then Tampa runs all the way to the Cup final.
I know.
Last year wasn't like previous playoff years, to be fair. And I'll
It felt better.
criticize them.
It felt better.
They played. They didn't cave. They played. They came to
I
play.
agree, but then you look at the year before that, same thing. They had Montreal, who, if we weren't in a COVID
Yeah, that's
all
true.
Canadian division, something like Montreal wouldn't have even made the playoffs.
You're right. Shit, you had to bring that up.
And then
Right.
so
Yeah.
there was no reason that the
Yeah,
Leafs
so you can't really use the Tampa as a sign of really much.
No, but there's no reason that the Leafs shouldn't have moved on from the first round. Really, the last 2 years, but I mean, arguably more so against Montreal. And then Montreal runs all the way to the Cup. So you start to like add these things up
Yeah.
in your head, and you're like, well, if the 2 teams that the Leafs lost to made it to the Cup final, what could the Leafs have done? I'm not saying they would have made the Cup final as well, but just you're sort of looking at these 2 instances, going, well, what could we have done? So in terms of like looking forward. Man, I think if they just get past the first round, it's almost like a curse will just be like lifted off the group. It'll be like, okay, we did this. Now expectations of just
Tampa's
The,
still
city,
going to be
the city's
going to
celebrate like they won the cup if they win the first round.
yeah, I know.
It's
And I
good.
feel like the matchups don't get any easier because you still got Tampa in your division.
Yep.
You still got, I think, Boston's.
I think Rangers are probably
Well,
going to be good this year.
Florida's still there. They've
Florida now,
Florida's
yeah.
a wagon.
Kachuk's over there. Yeah, and this is our full last season of Matthews. He's gone because this is our last season, and they're going to have to trade him before the trade deadline next year.
my opinion
It's our
is
last season
my
of
opinion is he's
Matthews.
gone. Yeah,
No,
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm basing it. My knowledge is 0, so I'm basing it off 0. And it's just
As
I
a
don't know.
Leafs fan,
It's a
yeah.
starting point.
Yeah.
No, but as a Leafs fan, you just expect him to be gone because you're like, okay, he's not staying.
Because so are you saying that every Leafs fan is a pessimist at this point?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think
Okay,
so.
no, that's good. It's just where we're starting.
I mean, I'm a fan. Like, I'll go.
Of course.
I'll spend my money and go.
Of course.
I'm really not expecting very much.
I think if you like, look, it's very hard to win a cup. Like, it's flipping hard. Doesn't matter. Look at Ovechkin, right? And he had players around him for a long time and stuff. It's just very hard. And look, even Crosby, like, yes, he won multiple, but then later on in his career, still a great team.
Yeah.
They couldn't win, right?
Stamkos was great for many years. They didn't.
Yeah. So it's. You know, so if Toronto still shows promise, you know, maybe there's a chance. And I think playing, and I don't know, maybe you can share this with me. If you have a good line mate, like if you're a scorer and you have someone that can feed you the puck, so like you're playing with a guy like Marner that's obviously very skilled as well,
sure,
and you can get him the puck, that's got to be like a positive outside of if you're just a guy on your own.
Depends how annoyed he is with the Toronto media and stuff. Like, if he's just like tired of it and he's going to go sign a monster deal,
that's true.
He might go to the Rangers. Like, he's American.
I feel like it has less to do with the media at this point for him, because I think he's been here long enough now that he just knows what that is, and it's just autopilot. I feel more it's just, what does he view the long-term roadmap of the franchise,
of the organization?
He's going to be the vote. If he sticks around, he's thinking it's worth sticking with this group because I might win multiple times.
That's right.
Yeah. I think,
or at least see a roadmap to one.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
You know?
But the organization as a whole feels like, you know, from the outside, like I don't know, but from the outside looking in, from when Shanahan came in, outside of the personnel decisions, it just seems the organization as a whole is not the shit fest that it was before. Because from the outside before, like when your early years, I guess, it looked like a shit fest, you know.
It was a bit of a mess.
So it seems like it's not that anymore. Like, I think with all the training staff that they've put their investments into other areas that aren't salary cap related that can then help players and stuff. And now that there's some promise, they get a little bit of hometown discount type stuff happening, which never used to happen. Like, the guys didn't want to come back and finish their careers as a leave because they're just like, what's the point, right? So.
Yeah, you're right, and some of that's benefiting us because Spezza was
a great deal for a while. Giordano signed
another Babcock thing. Sat him on the first game. That's another.
That was
as
shit.
soon as I saw that was my final straw.
No, that was
who does that?
Well, you know the Modano thing as well, right?
Yeah, I forgot what it is, but I've heard of this.
He played like 1,498 games in the NHL, and he was on Detroit to finish his career.
Right.
Babcock scratched him the last like 10 games of the season.
Can you believe
Mike Modano, like the greatest American left winger of all time? Didn't get to 1,500 games because Babcock just couldn't put him on the ice for 30 seconds.
Yeah. Those types of moves it's just not right.
So then you're in Arizona, and then
you really want to dive into the rest?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how you got to Sat Street. Yeah. I'm just trying to see the whole story here, because then you were in the league then for a few more years.
Yeah. So I went to Arizona. I finished that season with Arizona. I signed on July 1st with the Canadiens, a 2-year deal. Didn't make the team at a training camp. And it was the first year that they opened up their American League team in Laval, just outside Montreal. So I started there. I was there only about 2 months, which I found kind of strange because usually when you sign a multi-year deal, they're not looking to trade you in the first 2 months. So I don't know where that one went wrong. But anyway, I got traded to...
I'm ready to throw the Habs under the bus too. I hate the Habs. So I don't know what their problem is either.
I don't know. That was a strange one though, because I've never been... at least in my playing days, now that I'm working 9 to 5, I'm definitely a little bit more out of shape. But during my playing days, I never had an issue with my physicality or being in shape or my stamina and all this stuff. And it seemed to be like there was this weird misconception that I was out of shape in some way or another. And I remember one day in the dressing room in Laval, I was having, I wasn't a coffee drinker at the time, so I think I was having like a hot chocolate or something like that. And the assistant coach walks by and he's like, "What are you drinking?" I'm like, "I'm having a hot chocolate." He's like, "Ooh." He's like, "I don't know if you should be drinking that." I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
So I don't know. There was just like kind of, anyway, so I got traded out of there. I went to New York. I started with the Hartford, their franchise, their American League franchise. Was only there for about a month and a half. Got called up to the Rangers in mid-January, right around my birthday. Played the rest of the season with the Rangers. That was a lot of fun.
That must have been cool. Yeah, Madison Square Garden, New York, and stuff.
That was a lot of fun. The Rangers really treat their players really, really well.
What does that mean?
Well, typically when you get called up as a guy from the American League going up to the NHL, you get put in a hotel because it's very difficult, obviously, to track down a 4-month rental, especially in New York City.
Sure.
Like, what are you going to do? Anyway, so they put guys on call-ups. I guess they own condos around the city.
Oh, wow.
And they owned a few in this building, kitty corner to Madison Square Garden. Beautiful apartment. It was like 2-bedroom. Nice open area, looked right downtown at the One World Trade Center, and it would have been like $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
Anyway, team picked that up. That was awesome. All the meals were first class. They share a practice facility with the Knicks. And so you go in the morning and the Knicks are on one side, the Rangers are on another. They have a chef doing omelets and there's a hot station.
Okay, so you felt wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also a weird time for the organization because they were going through a bit of a revamp as well. You know, they were pushing for the playoffs, but it felt sort of like my Toronto days where it was kind of like, well, are you really? And they ended up blowing up the team at the trade deadline. They traded McDonough away. They traded Shattenkirk away. And there was a few things. Lundqvist was at the end of his career as well. But anyway, it was still a lot of fun to play with those guys and get a chance to play at Madison Square Garden. And, another example of how they treat the guys too is I got courtside tickets to a Knicks game.
Oh, wow.
So you get to go in, you get the VIP treatment. There's like the back room, there's movie stars in there. The lead singer of Train was in there. Cool. Turtle from Entourage was in there. And then,
oh my God.
Here I am,
Turtle
feeling like a little bit of a pleb, right?
Yeah.
And during one of the stoppages in play, they introduce all their celebrity guests at the game. And I wasn't thinking anything of it because they'd done Train and Turtle and whatever, and they have little clips to Entourage or the singing in a concert, and then they throw me up on the jumbotron, scoring a goal with the Rangers, and put me on. Anyway, it was
that
really
stuff matters.
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, especially for a guy that was just called up a month or two ago. Was in and out of the lineup even then. That was pretty special.
Well, it creates moments, right?
Yeah.
It's like moments in your life that you just remember. It's just kind of cool.
Just going to give more for the team.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, I'll try to land this plane because we're trying to get back how I ended up at Stat Street. But so the following season, I was in the American League completely with Hartford, got traded to Rockford, which was Chicago's farm system. That was my first full year in the American League since I was like 21 or something like that. Like I don't think since I turned professional, I'd spent an entire year in the American League without some time in the NHL. And so I was kind of like, you know what, my writing's kind of on the wall here. I've proven everything I can in the American League at this point. I was a perennial, 25 goal scorer, point a game guy. It's like if I'm not getting a shot to get called up, I'm going to see what's next. So did my research on Europe and looking at opportunities over there. And the KHL was one that caught my attention. And not to mention that my wife, she's Canadian, but her parents are Russian. And so she actually speaks Russian from growing up. So I was like, oh, maybe this won't be so bad. I'll have you to sort of help me out and, get around, whatever, all that stuff. So anyway, I signed a 2-year deal over there. I went over there. I had a great experience, minus COVID hitting at the end of the first year. And
is that when you were playing with like Datsuk?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was in Datsuk's hometown, a city called Yekaterinburg. 2.5-hour flight east of Moscow. So kind of like central Russia, but Russia's such a big country that it's like, I'm not even sure that is the center of Russia, but it was like right next to the Ural Mountains. But anyways, we got treated phenomenally. Like we were one of the only teams in the league that had their own plane. So we were flying around basically like you do in the NHL, catered meals, great fan base.
Was that his team or something?
No, just his city, just where.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was awesome. And then obviously COVID hit, which brought things back a little bit and created a bit of a tornado, if you will. Fans in and out of the building, lockdowns when I was traveling back there. My second year when I went back there, landed, had 2-week quarantine. I'm in my condo, and kudos to the team. They do everything they can to help you get over there, and then kind of once you're over there, you're kind of on your own. And for a guy who doesn't speak the language, that was pretty difficult. And my wife wasn't with me to start. So anyway, I get there. I'm on my second season. Thank goodness it was my second season. So I'm 2-week quarantine in my condo, and I know now how to use the equivalent of Uber Eats over there. So at least I can get myself some food. So my 2 weeks ends. I go join the team. We're doing training camp, this, that, the whole thing. Well, sure enough, 12 days later, the whole team gets COVID. Back into quarantine for 2 weeks. So my first 6 weeks in Russia on my second season, I was stuck in my condo for 4 of them. Anyway, had a great experience. I was actually looking to go back at the end of my 2-year contract to another team in one of the big cities in Russia. Nothing sort of came down the pipeline. I had an opportunity present itself in Sweden, a team in Stockholm, Djurgårdens, and I decided to jump on it. I was like, you know what, I don't want to wait around for one of these Russian teams. They were dragging their feet. I kept getting, give us another 24 hours, give us another 24 hours. And the Swedish team was like, look, we kind of need a decision, for our organization to move forward. And I'm sure I could have pushed them along as well, but I didn't want to. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to take this deal. It's in front of me, and it's a new experience. Get to go to a new city, beautiful city. Yeah. Let's do this. So I went over there, and this was last hockey season. This was the one that just happened. So I went over there at the beginning of October. First few weeks, I was really enjoying it, and then sort of fell back into, not really being excited about going to the rink every morning. And I'd had these sort of thoughts for a couple of years, to tell you the truth. Like, living away from family, being overseas, it takes a toll. And, Russia was a 10-hour time change, and now Sweden was 6, but nobody was traveling because of COVID. So no family was going to come visit. And we had just had a young daughter at the time. She was 2 months old.
So you're so at that point, do you just start mentally then checking out? You're
mentally checking out. Totally. And I'd had my eye on sort of what was next for a while. And around October, end of October, when I'm in Sweden, one of my ex-hockey buddies sends me an article on Bitcoin. And he's like, hey, would you mind, just having a look at this? I'd be curious to get your thoughts. So I read the article.
Why did he send it to
why
you?
did he send
Because
it to you?
you've looked at that stuff.
I think he thinks I'm a smart guy. I got him tricked or something.
Okay,
like
no,
that.
I just didn't know if there was something specific.
No, nothing specific. I think he just wanted my opinion on it, which was interesting.
You were taking weren't you taking some university or college? Didn't the NHL set you up with something? No.
Yeah, you're right, actually. So amongst the NHLPA, the Players Association, they have a great program to help players finish their education. And so I had taken them up on that. And so I completed my business administration degree online through Southern New Hampshire University. And so I did that over the course of 6 or 7 years. I just chipped away at it. Finally, it culminated a year ago, May.
So maybe that was the back of his
maybe.
head.
Maybe he's like, oh, he's a university graduate. Want to get his opinion. Oops. Anyway, he flipped me over the article. I read it, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, because everything I'd ever thought about Bitcoin or crypto before that was, this is a scam. How can anything be a currency that depreciates 80% overnight and just bounces around like this? Like, what kind of store of value can this be? And I forget exactly what the article was. I think it had something to do with giving the unbanked the ability to hold value and transact value. And so that article led to another one, which led me to reading books, which led me to watching YouTube.
Oh, so it caught your attention.
It caught my attention.
Huh.
And then I'm starting, I'm way down the rabbit hole. Now I'm listening to podcasts, and I'm on social media following influencers and seeing what
So this is what, winter of
2021. This
2021.
this was October, November of 2021.
Yeah, okay.
And so the same guy, same ex-hockey buddy of mine who had sent me the original article, he had a neighbor that was a client of Sat Street. So obviously now I've fallen way down the rabbit hole on this, and now I want to buy my own Bitcoin in a meaningful way. So I got referred to Sat Street as a client.
Huh, got it.
Through my onboarding process with Sat Street, essentially my boss now, Mike, one of the co-founders, he said to me, if hockey doesn't work out for you, give me a call. Maybe there's an opportunity here for you to come work with our company. So like a month later, it's Christmas time. I've said, you know what, I've had enough of this Swedish hockey thing. It's time to figure out what's next. My daughter was 3 months old.
Damn, that's a huge life moment. That's a huge
decision.
Like
they were over there with me, no support network. And it was like, I never dreamt of playing in the Swedish Elite League. My career was going this way. My earnings were going this way. It was like, this isn't sustainable financially, nor is it sustainable for my mental health. I was like, let's just figure out what's next. I was obviously very passionate about crypto and felt like it's a super underpenetrated market. So I called Mike up. I said, hey, I don't know if you were kidding or not, Mike, but I'm done with this hockey gig. So if you were serious, I'd love to have a conversation with you about potentially joining the team at Sat Street. So I chased him and John, the other co-founder, for about a month and a half, just, I guess, in the interview process, and communicating with them and speaking. And yeah, I joined up with the team at the beginning of March. And my role is essentially just looking to drive more business across our desk. And so for people who aren't familiar with Sat Street, we're a high volume crypto trading desk. So we specialize in servicing accredited and permitted individuals on the individual side, and then more on the institution/corporate side. We help public and private companies make treasury allocations to Bitcoin or Ethereum, or we get asked a lot. And Tom, you asked me before the show if we only do Bitcoin. And the truth is we've traded over 150 pairs. It's not something that we advertise because we're a Bitcoin leaning desk. It's the one we have the most ultimate faith and believe in long term. But if someone comes to us and they've done their homework and they've done their research, as long as it's not an outright scam, they're free to do with their money as they wish. And we can source pretty much any token we need to source for them. But and then on the Web3 side, we help NFT companies, metaverse companies, Bitcoin mining operations. We act as their liquidity providers because obviously they got to keep their lights on and pay their employees.
What does that mean, acting as their liquidity providers? If they
Well,
need
so
to sell something, you're gonna find a market. You're gonna make this happen.
Yeah, we're just an on and off ramp for
okay.
digital assets. So miners use us. You know, they obviously mine a whole bunch of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
They got to sell it back into cash because they got to keep, you know, the electricity running and employees paid. So they use us to convert it back into cash for them. So
Okay.
Yeah.
The CEO of Hut 8 has been on here. I don't know if you know Jamie Leverton or not.
I don't, but I'm sure that my guys do. Like,
Yeah.
I'm still very new to the space.
Yeah, no, I could. Well, yeah, and there's a lot to take on. You're actually sitting in the same seat that Greg Foss did his first podcast ever.
I listened to Foster in here.
Yeah, did you?
Oh, I've listened. He can
when
get
he
going.
first came in here, we didn't know and I did not know he had never been on a podcast. And he came in here and he started smashing the table right where you're sitting there. And at the time he was like, "It's just math." Remember? And he's like, "You don't understand. It's a CDS on the entire fiat system." And I was already sold on Bitcoin, but this guy was blowing me away.
Well, the math he was talking about was just like complicated bond trader math that like was
just grade 11. I'm like, you
yeah,
gotta slow it.
That's
down.
not grade 11.
If that's grade 11, then I'm struggling.
Grade 11 without still paying attention in school and doing well in math. You know what I mean? I know that's not grade 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're new to it, but you kind of chose the fire hose approach because you're now at Sat Street.
Absolutely.
And you're dealing, you hear some cool conversations, I'm sure, just on what's going on.
Absolutely.
And you've entered the time, because to me, now I'm talking like you're not here, Peter, but Nick, Peter's joining an industry that's, the 10-year trend on this industry to me is straight up. And the reason we talk that way is because when I went into tech, late 1990s, you could do no wrong. You entered a software company and there was just money flowing around. There was the tech crash and stuff, but if the companies that survived through that survived, then everything and grew to be big. I was at Oracle.
Yeah, there were times with more money flowing around and less money flowing around, but still.
The sales,
overall.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was the bad time too. And I feel like that's kind of like right now in the whole kind of Bitcoin.
Well, even tech space right now too. It's not a time when there's just less sloshing around. But I mean, it's a more mature industry now for sure.
Now it's a bit more mature. And then real estate, like since 2008, when interest rates came down and stayed down, you could do no wrong, especially in the GTA. You bought a property, and even if you didn't know what you were doing, you made money just by holding the property. And that was just another trend, low interest rates for so long. And trends matter. So I just feel like you're entering, and this is something I tell my son's third year at Western right now. And I tell him all the time too, like just kind of try to pick an industry that's trending.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
well, that's how I felt, you know, especially coming from hockey, which was unique in of itself. I didn't really want to go a traditional finance route, and finance has always been something that sort of interested me, and tech's always been something that interested me, even though I'm not tech savvy in any way. I can't code, I can't really do any of that stuff, but I felt like crypto was sort of this like great merging of finance and tech. And as long as you can kind of speak to it at a high level, at least to start, it's a great industry to get involved in, and you can sort of gain expertise over time, which is what I feel like I'm doing. But you know, to your point, you know, 95% of people can't have a very good conversation with you about it on the street. And so it's an industry where you can sort of become quote unquote an expert, I guess, sort of before.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to look at it for sure. You can become an expert because who's an expert really?
Exactly.
Everybody's trying to figure this stuff out.
Right.
And
what about the business like, you know, so I know you started relatively recent, so everything is like an uptick for you, but I'm just wondering, like, is there more, do you get more calls from businesses now overall that are saying, hey, look, we want to park some of our funds, like some of the treasury allocation, we want to put it in business? Is that? I
gotta feel it's pretty quiet right
now.
now.
I'm thinking right now it's going to be quiet. That's what I'm wondering, you know, so.
I would say it's pretty quiet right now. I think a lot of investors are sitting on the sidelines just in cash, just sort of waiting for the market to pick a direction.
I think that's all markets right now.
Yeah.
Right?
But I feel like this market, the next liquidity wave, this market is going to be nuts.
Yeah, that's our sentiment too. But
yeah, is that the conversation? I just feel like, to me, it's like a tsunami, right? The tide's pulled out of the liquidity, but it has to come back in. And this goes to Greg Foss math. It has to come in stronger than it came in before.
Well, yeah, and there's more maturity in the market. Like there's more belief in it. There's been staying power.
So that's a big difference as well, which something I wasn't a part of, but something I've sort of learned from my colleagues. So Mike and John, the two co-founders of Sat Street, they've been in the space for 5 or 6 years each. Mike actually started at CoinSquare. He was one of their first employees. He built out CoinSquare Wealth. So he was one of the first guys you could actually get on the phone in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Do a trade of size. And then John built a company on the Stellar network. I think it was like a DeFi wallet or something like that. He sold it to CoinSquare around the same time, 2017, 2018. That's how Mike and John got together, got to know each other. As entrepreneurs do, they put their heads together. They're like, we can go do this on our own. They started Sat Street, and they've been crushing it ever since. You know, so
good for them.
Yeah, so they started in June of 2020. We've done over 1.1 billion in transactions since that time. Just servicing the top of the market clients in Canada. So that was part of the appeal for me with these guys was, look, this is a small team. I'm employee number 8, I think I was. And so it was an opportunity to get involved in this industry with a team that's having a lot of early success, is going in the right direction. And, hopefully you can be part of that growth story moving forward.
It's funny, that story right there, going back to what you said, Tom, it reminds me kind of, like you said, about the software, like the early days of software. Because, one of the co-founders built some wallet thing. It was like him and some 2 other coders in the basement someplace, or just him himself that built this thing, sold it to another CoinSquare that at that time was a relatively small company. Starting out, there was like, it's like all these little companies that just started in these, when we talked to Maurizio at Ledin, it's like the way they started recently. There used to be these meetups from like some of these university grads when before like all these things took off and all these altcoins were even created. They were having these meetups, and then they all went off and did these little projects, and now there's some things of coming together and they're circling back to other stuff. So yeah, the synergies are very similar to I think a lot of the software stuff, at least the stuff that I've, some of the documentaries you've watched between the Microsoft, the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs stories, how they built those things out very early on in their garages and stuff like that.
I actually remember that one of the points I wanted to make about that too, with Mike and John having experience in the space, is that a lot of investors in the last bear markets have gone, okay, I want to sell, give me my money back, I'm done with this. Whereas now it's a big, even if they're selling, it's just because they're looking for another re-entry point.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not
different.
It's not give me my money, I'm out. It's just, well, I'm going to sell, look for, maybe the price is going to come down, I'm going to get back in, which I think is a huge shift in sentiment.
And the reason that I think these guys are going to benefit greatly. So I know you do institutional stuff and people who are doing $25,000 or more.
Yeah, as long as they're an accredited.
Yeah, so someone's going to do that amount. If they're accredited, you will work with them. Yeah. But I'm like, Nick, just think when they're going to position themselves to some institutional investors. Some of these guys, you remember we were going through James Lavish's kind of whole debt spiral talk that him and Foss were breaking out, and a 3.2% interest, which is about the U.S. 10-year yield right now. When the U.S. debt rolls over, because it's about 30 trillion, working on 31 trillion, the interest on the carrying cost at 3.2%, and I know it takes several years for it to all roll over, but it's going to roll over and cost them $800 billion. No, sorry, it was 1.2
over $1 trillion.
Yeah, it was $1.2 trillion. Where right now the cost of it is $400 billion. So now the amount of money printing that's going to have to come in, because that's in a deficit position. They don't have the extra money to make those interest payments. So that money has to come from somewhere. So when that money gets kind of created into an existence and it works its way through the system, and Canada must match, we have to keep our currency weaker than the US dollar. So if they print a lot and it weakens their dollar, we have to match or do better here. And these guys are going to have some institutions looking to allocate. And I just feel there's so much more money about to come in the system, which sounds weird now with everything down. And it might not come until the end of next year. Like, it's going to take a little bit.
Who knows?
Who knows when that happens? But I just feel like if the narrative has changed from what you said, some people are telling you, hey, we're out of it. Yeah. And now they're saying, hey, we're waiting on the sidelines. I feel like there's going to be more coming in from the sidelines than any of us can anticipate. And time will tell. But I just feel like this is one of those rare moments. And it's like this brief little pause here. And then it's a lot of money is going to flush in, because think of all the bond traders who have to allocate somewhere right now. No bond traders that I know. Some of my buddies are in the Bay Street and capital markets. None of them talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They're still talking about bonds, how they're going to allocate, what percentage, what yield, what duration bonds. I mentioned Bitcoin to them kind of to irritate them a little bit, saying, hey, I know you're coming in. Have you figured it out yet? And they're like, what are you talking about? And when these guys have to come in, and Sat Street's positioned as like maybe an institutional kind of place to play with this, could be a real nice seat to be sitting in, because I don't think there's many of them.
No, I think it's going to happen. Like once there's more money flowing around in that industry, then I think there's just some more consolidation is going to happen. Like you saw it starting to happen already before kind of all the liquidity dried up, I guess late last year, early this year. Yeah. In certain sectors, financials was one of them, insurance was another one, where there was just money and there was this capital was going to just acquisitions, and just like, hey, where do we get growth from? And they're just dumping money everywhere to look for something.
Yeah, so you're
right?
thinking a company like Sat Street could growth and be appealing to a traditional finance company that might
too.
try to come in.
I still don't see how like some of these companies, like there's some banks that look, we're TD customers on the business side. If you saw the TD commercial banking side of things and the interface, it's direct from dial-up 80s. Like it is like the word. Like I laugh at it. It's just horrendous. And some of the TD people I speak to that are the team that we have to deal with, they're like, no, we know they're working on it. We've told them, we've given it. Trust me, you're not the first person to say that. Like it is like dial-up, right? Yep. And some of these banks, they move so slow. If they ever want to come in, they're not going to build something out on their own. They're just going to look. They're just going to look around and say, hey, who can we just acquire? And that's what it's going to be. So I think that's the type of stuff that happens. So I know you're talking on the asset side as well, and just kind of like for activity in the business, and then I'm just looking at the business side as well. It just seems like
basically we should figure out if we can invest in Sat Street right now. Basically, what I mean.
Well, it's really exciting because there's sort of multiple facets. Not faucets. We're not drinking.
It could be multiple faucets turned on.
Turn on and off. Thank you.
Could have a tequila faucet in the office. Maybe we can get one of those set up.
But so our core business is as a trading desk. But below that, we also have Sat Street Ventures, where Round 13 Capital, a prominent VC in the city. Bruce Croxton is one of the managing partners there. A lot of people recognize him from Dragon's Den.
And the Raptors games.
And the Raptors
he goes to a bunch of Raptors games.
But so they seeded Sat Street with a little bit of money when Sat Street was getting off the ground. Obviously, Sat Street as a company has done really, really well for them. So one of Round 13's big investors came to them with the chops for crypto. And Round 13 said, well, we're no experts, but we have the guys at Sat Street. So they tapped our firm, and now we're partners with them on a digital asset fund.
That's interesting.
So we have a little over 70 million US, pretty heavily cashed up at this point. Done some investments, some deployment into projects, but I mean, that's another area that we're really excited about because there's so much building going on.
100%.
You know, like Mike sits on the board for that fund, and he sees 30 or 40 different opportunities every week. You know, so he's sort of a filter, and then he'll pass a couple to the fund for their consideration, and then they'll look. But so there's multiple avenues to our business that we're really excited about. And another one too is we're just starting to roll out our self-directed trading platform. So we're just giving early access to some of our investors now, and that will actually eliminate. My understanding is it'll eliminate the $25,000 minimum trade size requirement. So if some of our investors want to go in and trade $500 or $1,000, then they're able to do that. And then obviously they still have access to the way we trade now, which is through encrypted group chat, and they can still leverage our traders directly if they want them to do the trades for them. But yeah, there's some great things happening with Sat Street that we're really pumped about.
What was a few things? Encrypted group chat is amazing. Just trading volume on just text someone and it happens. So that's not the interface that we're used to on the commercial banking side. But you said there's the money in the fund right now, and I know it's relatively early, so they're looking to deploy it and they're looking for the right opportunities. I just think a lot of people are just sitting on the sidelines with a lot of cash right now. So as much as liquidity has dried up,
agreed,
there's a lot of money on the sidelines in all sorts of industry. And once kind of like things settle down, and if there's any indication that this tsunami starts changing direction again,
flow in.
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be. Yeah, it just the inflation side of things is going to take off from the asset side. It's just going to be whether it's justified or not. I think it's just bound to happen.
Yeah, the only flip side to this is that if the economy blows up way harder than we think,
then you have to fund.
Yeah, but I still think this space is the new frontier. Like I feel like if the economy blows up harder, there's still if you're going to look for growth opportunities, this is the space you're going to be directed to.
Well, maybe you have to use the capital elsewhere for a period of time.
Yeah, no,
if you have so maybe there's cash flow issues in a variety of industries. I'm not talking Sat Street. I just mean across the board, which dries up some more of that dry powder that's kind of on the side.
Yeah, like maybe there is more pain ahead. Like I don't know exactly how. None of us know how this energy crisis is going to happen. You know, what plays out in the next 6 months, what plays out this winter.
Based on all the moves they've made so far, I would say that there's more pain ahead.
It's going to be horrible.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, because but it's interesting that the visibility that you're kind of sharing what you're seeing, because some of the things that I look at are totally different. Like I look at just the growth of the Lightning Network that's on top of Bitcoin, and I just see the amount of Bitcoin going in there. You see the amount of transactions happening in there. So the price of Bitcoin is way down, but you can see, and this is why it reminds me of tech, because when I was back in tech, after the tech crash, Oracle was still selling. We were still selling to Chicago Stock Exchange, Mercantile Exchange. We had all these CIOs buying, implementing databases, using technology, bringing everything up to speed, but everything was depressed. And when I look back on that time, so much was being developed. And it reminds me of Lightning.
Yeah, the new rails were being
The
built
new
around
rails are
technology.
being built
Yeah.
right now, but the price is depressed. But if you look at just transactions, I was just, and I don't have the source of this, so you're just gonna have to take this,
No, I don't believe you, but I'll listen.
Yeah,
to
so
it.
I
I'll
think the
listen to you anyways.
amount of volume on Lightning in the last 12 months has gone up 100%. The amount of transactions, 400%, which means a lot of people are doing these just little tiny transactions on Lightning. And to me, that's just a sign that there's strength in what's happening here. It's not being abandoned, because if the price was down and that was all kind of dwindling on this second layer on top of Bitcoin, I'd be like, oh shit, nobody's using it. But the usage is actually increasing.
Yeah.
I'm still confused as to why there isn't more. Just like it's just not a topic of conversation. The Lightning Network at all. It's just, I guess there's just like there's no sex appeal to it. Maybe there's no.
It's hard to make money off it.
Yeah, I guess
You're going
that's
to
what
park
it
your
is.
Bitcoin. You're going to make transaction fees on it. I think it's
But just the growth and what's happening there. Like if you're in the space and you want to understand the space of technology, that's something.
It's hard to
it's
get
valuable.
stats. It's kind of like podcasting. It's hard to get
Yeah.
lightning stats.
Yeah,
There's
it's
no
all
good
opaque.
institute, even the institute at the institutional level. I don't think they can pull reporting stats really well on the Lightning Network. Everyone's trying to figure out how many channels. And when there's channels open on the Lightning Network, it's hard to see how many transactions. I don't think it's easy to report on the amount of transactions right now going through. You have to kind of be really geeky to figure that out.
Something that I find kind of interesting and an argument, well, maybe not an argument, but a discussion I like to have with people who go, well, I can't go buy a coffee with my Bitcoin. So, what utility does it have for me? And I'm like, well, do you value physical gold as a store of value historically? And they go, well, yeah, because the currency's backed or was backed onto it at one point or another. So they understand physical gold. I'm like, well, can you go to Starbucks and, take some gold shavings and go pay for your coffee? And they said, no. So I'm like, well, why do you get hung up on, the ability to buy and sell with Bitcoin? And I'm not saying that that's not a great thing, because it is. Like, I love the fact that the Lightning Network is getting stronger and growing and, giving more use case for Bitcoin. But in terms of valuing Bitcoin on its ability to have these minor transactions, it doesn't really line up for me. I just think that there's so much more out there that, historically we've looked at gold as this very valuable thing. It's a $10 trillion market cap.
Yeah.
Okay, well, who cares if we can't go buy a coffee with Bitcoin? Look how much better it is than gold anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah.
And we were at a bar in Waterloo. We paid for a beer with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
He was taking payments on the Lightning Network. We paid for a pint.
But
And we've paid for speaker fees with I don't know if I should be. Do I say all that? And we've paid for multiple things in the real world with Bitcoin. But so that argument, I think, is dying slowly. People just don't know it.
Yeah.
But it also applies. Like if we go to our fathers from Croatia, we go to Croatia every year, and their currency they start using the euro now in January, but they still have their own currency. It's called the kuna, and still there to this day. You will pay for a coffee or something in kuna, but if you were going to get a mortgage or you're buying a property, or you're even going, when we rent some boats and we go around, those transactions are all done. The larger transactions are all done in euros. And before that, they were done in Swiss francs. Right. And then before that, it was German marks.
Mm-hmm.
So they were always using, so no one got hung up on the fact that they're like, well, I can't buy my coffee with the German mark.
With the Swiss franc in Croatia.
Because the price isn't
Yep.
in that. It's just, you just use multiple.
And that's what I
things
think the
depending
world
on what
we're
the
gonna,
transaction is.
And I think we're going to have the Canadian dollar. Like I think in some of these apps going forward, you'll have the Canadian dollar in your app, but you also have your Bitcoin or whatever else you think is the store of value, and you'll just be able to kind of interface with both. I just think Canadians here have been very used to the Canadian dollar, and that's it. But everywhere else in the world, they deal with multiple currencies. So I think that's something just new to Canadians. And the country here in Canada has worked so well for like 50 years. We've never really had this conversation about we never really.
I was going to say, we come from a place where we have a lot of financial privilege, right? Like
Yeah.
we have a currency that doesn't debase 50% in a 12-month period.
100%.
But some of our clients are from Argentina, and whenever they race back home, they're looking to exchange for U.S. dollars. They're not going to carry around
Was it
local currency.
Venezuela, the Bolivar? They're like,
Yeah.
get me out of these things. Whatever else is out.
Well, even our aunt, you earlier on, you were talking about your friend, and I think you mentioned, who uses Bitcoin, and the word unbanked, I think, came up. I think you shared that. And our aunt in Croatia, our father would work hard here as a drywaller, save up money, send $500 to his sister. He would lose $50. I think it was on Western Union fees or whatever fee to send it. And then the people that gave the money to our aunt would steal $100 from her.
That's right.
So he would work hard, be taxed, say $500. She would get $350.
Yeah, it's gross.
It's gross.
Yeah, it's gross.
So when everyone's like, you just haven't been exposed to these kinds of things. Whereas if you could send her $500 and she receives $500 of value, that's huge.
Yep.
It's a completely different. And never mind that she had, just imagine the feeling she had when she knew these people were stealing from her, she could do nothing about it. And then she sees them having nice lunches and stuff with the money. I mean, just from a human dignity point of view, it's kind of shitty.
Yeah.
You know, so that part matters. And
I used to always fight. I would always play devil's advocate about, well, what if the government did this and do this? And now, like, it seems pretty, at least the direction they're headed, they're regulating it more than outlawing it, right? And it seems like they, for the most part, some of the positioning they've taken so far has been, as long as we get our hands on our cut, they're going to be okay with it. So, it's just that, and that's going to be the biggest thing. And that type of system where you kind of have both and are using both allows them to get their cut when they're going on and off, and who knows how long that continues. And, if they lose control, but as long as the governments have control, that's what they freak out about. And I imagine that's what you guys are seeing too. Like, as far as like on the regulator side, if you're going into the smaller trades, just the amount of regulations and stuff you have to deal with. I can only imagine what's going on in that office when I guess it's OSC is coming in and being like, okay, here's what we need with all this, the paperwork, this whatever FinTrack or whatever else it is that you guys are doing. It must be chaotic.
I know it's an ongoing process for our guys, not something that I work specifically on a day-to-day basis, but definitely something that, my guys are very focused on and making sure that we're above board. And they've done a fantastic job doing an internal audit so we can pass a third-party audit and, get all that regulation in place. But
could you imagine sorry to cut you off, but if we had some, like the OSC coming in here saying, okay, let's go, guys, this is what we're going to need from us. I just don't like, when paperwork already bugs me. And if they're like, okay, here's all the stuff we need, like from our business, we have to start handing it over and do all this. I'd be like, guys, get out of here. I think I'd get like so overwhelmed by it. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to close the business. Like, I'd rather than deal with you guys. I don't want to deal with it.
No, but I think the underlying point though is that regulation is really good for the space in general, because then more institutional money flows in, and the more institutional money that flows in, the less volatility there is, the more liquidity that there is. I just ultimately think that it just gives it way more credence. And I was communicating with one of our clients this morning, actually, and he made a comment, something along the lines of, "Oh, I'd love to see some more positive momentum for Bitcoin." And I responded, again, paraphrasing, but there's so many reasons to be excited for Bitcoin long term, like more so now than there was 6 months ago, and more so 6 months ago than there was 2 years ago. And it's just not being reflected in the price right now. But that doesn't mean that, there isn't a reason to think that this isn't going to go to the proverbial moon.
So how do you, and it's such a big topic, like how do you tell someone because to be really bullish on it, you kind of have to know macroeconomics. You kind of have to know maybe the history of money and what hard and sound money is. Like there's all these weird factors. If you were looking back, I guess, to yourself as an NHL player, to some younger NHL players now, and you wanted to say, hey, check this stuff out, how would you even approach it? Is there something?
I think selling Bitcoin is very difficult, and I think it's very situation dependent. And what I try to do is I try to meet people where they are. So if I'm speaking with someone who's versed in real estate, then I try and approach Bitcoin from a scarcity, supply limit, 21 million Bitcoin only ever, because a lot of real estate people, such as you guys, you would understand supply and demand. Well, how much waterfront property are you ever going to have? They're not making more oceans, and they're not making more lakes. So I try to come at it from that angle. If someone, maybe has a better understanding of, let's say, insurance, then maybe I try I try and scare them on the debt spiral that we're in. Look, Bitcoin's an insurance on, the fiat Ponzi, as our friend Greg Foss likes to say. But I think just going into a conversation on Bitcoin cold, it's kind of difficult on where to approach it, because there's so many layers to it that it can become very overwhelming if you kind of come out without a direction. And I even experienced that too when I started to fall down the rabbit hole, because you'd watch one video on this concept and then another video on that concept, and you're like, well, how do I bring this all together? Like, it's just crazy.
Was there some podcasts, or so, was there something that really worked for you? For me, it was the Bitcoin Standard, the book. For whatever reason, with my background, that book brought it together really nicely for me. Was there something for you? Digital
Gold was a book that I read. I really enjoyed that one. It was a little bit more of a history, talking about some of the collapses that happened, but sort of the growth of the industry as well. I'm currently reading Rick Edelman's book, The Truth About Crypto, which I'm really enjoying. For those who aren't familiar with Rick Edelman, he's one of the best investment advisors of all time. He basically built an investment firm from scratch, his wife and him, up to like over 250 billion in assets under management. And he essentially stepped away from it to focus on Bitcoin. What else? Andreas Antonopoulos,
Yeah, I forgot about his stuff.
All his YouTube
I read all his
videos.
bose early on. I totally forgot about those books.
So I haven't read
Those
his
little
books.
colored books. Okay, they're
But-
tiny little books.
But his YouTube talks I found very educational and sort of really laid a groundwork for me.
Yeah, I feel like he's disappeared a little bit, or I don't see him in the whole. I don't. Maybe he's around. And I just kind of have lost touch with his stuff.
I don't know, the Pomp, Anthony
Yeah,
Pomp
yeah.
podcast. Listen to him. There's a whole bunch of resources out there, but
Yeah.
those are sort of the four main ones that sort of come to my mind right now. And
Yeah, got it. Yeah, you're making me think of mine. One of mine also on that was Breedlove. Robert Breedlove had these like Medium articles. Do you remember like the why the number zero, Bitcoin
early
and the
ones,
number
yeah.
in zero, and Bitcoin and like God or something?
They were
there was, I
some of
forget
them
what it
some of them were
Bitcoin's a religion.
Yeah, it was like because he gets into the spiritual aspect of it, and it sounds crazy, but for some reason those articles like they worked with me. I was like, I really
they were a bit too much for me, but I
all my
understood,
friends hearing that are just going to have me for that one.
but I understood where he was coming from because I think he was coming from. For me, they were too deep personally.
I think he
to
was
read them.
coming from like, is this an economic truth?
Yeah, and how can it help? Like just the bigger picture of it, and I think that's what gets lost too. Like you were saying earlier, like our banking system and our currency has been really stable, but you look around the world, and this type of thing is
It's
just
needed.
needed for
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like in our lifetimes we're going to see major sovereign countries settle trade deficits with each other.
Well, that's Greg
Bitcoin.
Voss. That's Greg Voss.
That's correct, and I think his
and that's how he gets to his price prediction. I think of like $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Something like if it captures 5% of the debt market.
yeah,
something like
because if I was a big country like now, and I know Russia and China are trading oil now and doing it with the yuan or ruble. They're asking for rubles and they're kind of making it work, and they might be settling with gold and that kind of stuff. But longer term, you still have to trust, like unless someone's sending you a pallet of gold that you can verify, you still have to kind of trust these settlements up until some point until you take physical delivery. Like it's just going to come to the point to me naturally where if this is a true digital asset that nobody controls, why wouldn't you use it to settle? It's just economically has.
Well, it's just
less friction.
easier too,
Easy.
and it's cheaper. Like, how do you send that pallet of gold?
I remember when they
gotta
sent
put
a
it on
pallet
a
of
boat,
gold to
ship
Iran
it
for
across
something.
the ocean.
Yeah.
Was it
We're
gold?
gonna
No, it's
fly
cash.
the security.
That's right. When France wanted its gold back, Germany wanted its gold back from the U.S. only like
They took it recently.
I think
Well,
it was after the
relatively
financial crisis. Yeah, I think it took like 3 years. They did it piecemeal.
Yeah.
Can you like? It just sounds silly.
Yeah, when you could just send it all at once and basically like sending an email.
Yeah, or even yeah, exactly. And that brings me up back to Sat Street for a second. If someone's buying with you guys, do you guys custody it? And are they able to take their own custody with Sat Street?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so both are available.
Yeah, both are available. So first and foremost, so we essentially have three solutions. One, we're happy to custody assets. We have roughly 150 million assets under custody right now. Obviously, it moves around depending on where the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the other things are. So happy to do that for clients. We leverage our own cold storage wallets. We have them geographically dispersed amongst, safety security or safety deposit boxes, multi-sig, all that type of stuff to make sure that our
Your house?
I thought you were.
Yeah, my house. Don't come knocking on
I
my
thought you
door.
were. I thought you were going
I don't
to
have
share the locations. We have them geographically
Yeah,
dispersed
here, the
here.
GPS
Here.
coordinates
Yeah.
Muskoka, we're in Perrytown.
418 Iroquois. So great solution.
Actually,
there.
Peter, you're sitting right on top of some cement.
The second option is obviously they can take personal custody. So it just comes down to the comfort level because obviously as you take personal custody, you're your own third-party counter risk. So as long as you're comfortable moving your assets around, sometimes it can beg a bigger conversation. God forbid something happens to you. What fail-safes do you have in place to make sure that your kin can get access to it and all this stuff, right? So happy to send it back. And then the third one is if you're over 250,000 US, I believe the number is, then we can lay it off to a third-party custody solution that we're partners with. And there is a small fee that comes with that, but it is an insured solution. So it just, depending again on the investor, some of our corporate or institutional investors,
Yeah, they're not
like
gonna
lay
take
that off. They don't want to take personal custody. Maybe they don't want us to have it because it's not a qualified custodian. But yeah, three options.
It's going to be interesting talking to you in like 5 years and 10. I know that sounds like an eon from now, 10 years, but it's just going to be really interesting to see where
The
he's
speed
up
at
to.
which this stuff has been
Yeah.
moving in 5
Yeah.
years, you'd think it's weird because everyone focuses on short-term
Price.
stuff. So like you were talking about people in Bitcoin, they're focused on just the now. They're like, okay, I just don't get it because the price has just come down. They don't get it, but it just the developments in that space have been just moving faster and faster. Sorry, you mentioned a couple like hedge fund guys and stuff like the amount of and this is something we read about early on, just the amount of talent and money pouring into the space as far as development and building it out. Like that's where a lot of focus is going for people. So if that's all happening now, 5 years is
so
a
different.
lifetime. You know, there's a lot that can happen in a 5 year period.
Yeah.
It was like in university when I saw dial-up internet and Cindy Crawford. You're too young to probably even know who Cindy Crawford is. But Cindy Crawford came up in a bikini.
But thank you.
And a bikini, and it was kind of loading like this, and there's like 10 guys around, like, and it would go down the internet. You're like, oh, dang, you got to reload it. But then 5 years later, like it's just streaming. These pictures are streaming up. But it also reminds me, a year ago, the Fountain app for podcasts didn't even exist. So Fountain is these guys out of the UK. Oscar Mary has this awesome app where podcasts now, you download the Fountain app, and instead of using Spotify or Apple Music to listen to your podcast, you use Fountain. And if they like a podcast they're listening to, you can stream sats. It has a wallet built in. You stream sats to it. We've had people stream us sats. And if somebody makes a clip of, let's say, this episode and listening to you, and let's say other people listen to that clip and like the clip they make, they can send them sats. So they could take content from this show, clip it in a really good way. And if people like that clip, the person who took the clip can get sats sent to them.
Would you get sats because it was your original?
I think, I haven't had anyone do that. We should do it. I think you can, I know if people send us sats, we can set the ratio to say you gave us your wallet and you wanted some sats coming your way. We could kind of set some that if they sent like 1,000 sats or 100 sats or 10 sats, whatever, some could go to you, some could go to us. I don't know on the clips. We're just still kind of, we're learning. Like, I don't even know yet.
Yep.
I don't think anyone's really done a clip. But we should ask somebody for just a
I have the Fountain app, but I'm no expert on it. I haven't like totally done.
Yeah, it takes a little bit. I loaded it with some. I've sent some sats around to different podcasters that I kind of wanted to support. But that didn't even exist a year ago. And for the person who said, I can't pay for a coffee, well, you're just asking the wrong question. When before could you send sats to somebody for listening to something? Whereas before you would never say, let's say 25 cents equivalent in some monetary value to someone, because the fees to send 25 doesn't make sense. But now,
well, that's why Amex, Visa, MasterCard, they can't do it because there's like a 60 cent fee. So any transaction, that doesn't make sense for them.
So now with these tiny little micro payments, 20 cents here, 20 cents there, and maybe you kind of roll your eyes at that a little bit, but that changes the economic game.
If you've putting out content that's there for years, I'm not saying it's going to be millions of dollars, but there's some value.
Well, what a way to fundraise too. Somebody comes on that you want to get the money that before just small donations like that, they couldn't even really accept. Now everybody gives 50 cents for something they believe in. Really adds up and matters, right?
My thing is I just can't wait for, because I know it's coming, and it's when email, it's more widespread, and it's going to be longer than 5 years, this one, but I'm convinced it's going to be when you send your email, you can send some sats with it, and that either gets better placement in the inbox, or you'll have to do it.
So Jack Mahlers is using that now, where but you have to send him sats for the email to be delivered.
Is it? But I just didn't know the software because I thought it was through that browser-based software that they were.
Oh,
they were
might.
doing.
That's
so I didn't know
that's an interesting concept, though. I never thought of.
Well, just think about it, because just think of how much, and then all of a sudden, like even to send marketing, I'm not saying marketing emails are going to go away. Pure spam might go away because then the monetary numbers just don't work. But marketing emails, people might have to think about them a little bit more and make sure they're sending them to the right people with the right message, because there's some costs associated with it, and they can do the cost because it's just these little things. So maybe you don't have to pay. Maybe email's still free. But if you want better inbox placement,
it's like Google placement.
100%.
For the top.
It makes sense. It's coming because right now the inbox to all of us is a to-do list that somebody else made for me.
Yeah,
It's
really that's really what it is. I didn't make this to-do list. I look in my inbox and there's all these things. I'm emailing Peter 10 times, going, "What the hell's going on with the Leafs this year?" He's got to look at them. Hey, what's happening, Peter? Give me the insight.
Or you're rescheduling me.
Yeah. Sorry, we're traveling again. Sorry, can't make it. No, you were. I think you were. You went to some stag or something somewhere.
I think we both rescheduled one time.
Yeah. I was. I might have been guilty of one more. I'll give it to you. Yeah. You're right. But Peter, if you look back on your time, I guess, through hockey, and now this is a change for you, is there anything you would have done differently, or has everything worked out according to plan?
I don't know if anything is according to plan. If I could look if I could look back, I'd sign a 10-year contract for $10 million like Austin Matthews or Connor McDavid. Unfortunately, I wasn't that type of player, but that was the dream growing up. I think that I'm really happy with where I am right now, and I really like the group of guys that I'm working with, and I think that they have a really good head on their shoulders. And before I did join up with Stat Street, even though that was the opportunity that got presented, I did meet with a couple other exchanges just to chat with them as well and explore different opportunities. And I just always found myself coming back to Sat Street and coming back to these guys, Mike and John and the other guys on the sales team and whatever else. But no, I'm really excited for the industry and
Sounds like you found your AHL team. This is the AHL team that you liked, and I don't mean that you were playing in the NHL, but remember that group you said that wouldn't leave the rink?
Yeah,
it feels like you found that equivalent of guys in this industry.
Absolutely, and it's we were chatting before we went live, I think, but it's sort of a weird time to have gotten involved just because everything is so depressed in the markets, really across the board, but obviously more so crypto. Just it's sort of the biggest risk-on asset at the moment. We don't believe it's going to be that in 5 to 10 years, but. Weird time to get involved, but great time to be building relationships and getting to know people and building your knowledge base. So, as more and more people start to find the space, again, you're sort of that, expert, if you can ever really be an expert in this stuff. So, yeah, it's great to be part of the team with the Sat Street guys, and we're excited for the future.
One more, that's awesome. It feels like it's working out really nicely for you. Just from the outside watching, it really does.
Well, thank you.
And one other thing, what did you learn? What have you learned about yourself? Because you've been through a lot. Like you played at the highest level of sport with some of the most competitive people in the world. To make it to that level, your mindset is incredible. And to make it there, let's face it, everybody. Our kids, my son was playing hockey in Oakville. You see how hard it is to make it into the NHL. You did it. And then you went through a whole bunch of emotional highs and lows. What have you learned about yourself over the last 10 years that maybe you didn't know about yourself, or is kind of was interesting, something that you never lived through? Just there's probably a moment or something that came up that you're like, damn, I'm going to remember that.
It's a good question. And to put my finger on sort of one thing, I think is difficult. But, I guess I don't really take no for an answer, which maybe bodes well for me sort of being in a sales position as a business development team here with Stat Street. But, growing up, I always heard hockey's not a good career path, or, think about the percentages, how many people actually make it.
That's what's always used.
So you sort of push that aside and, you hear a lot, well, crypto's dead. It's, there's no, push that aside. Right. So, or playing professional hockey, well, how are you going to get a degree? How are you going to do that? Well, push that aside and just sort of continue to put one step in front of the other. And, I don't know, I guess just learning to be on a path and stick with it is something that I've historically been pretty good at. There's new challenges, right? I'm 31 now. I'm not 21 when I was a single guy where it was easy just to, devote my entire life to the thing that I maybe wanted to be working on. Whereas now I have a wife and I have a young daughter, and, so there's other important areas of my life that I need to focus attention on as well. But, how do I continue to just put one step in front of the other and continue building and be valuable to sort of all those relationships in my life?
Yeah, you don't take no for just hearing your story. It's obvious you don't take no for an answer.
Well, I mean,
trying to get into Babcock, trying to get time with Babcock.
I could flip it on its head, and look what you guys have built at Rockstar Real Estate, right? Like you guys built this from 0 to 100. So it's not dissimilar. It's just a different path.
Sure. Yeah. Totally. Pleasure to have you on, man. Anything we can ever do to help you out with anything, we want to. So
thank you.
Just let us know. And so what would be the best way for someone to find you? Is it just a website? Whatever you want to hand out. How, if someone's looking to find you, how can they?
So on Twitter, I'm at Peter Holland 13. And if someone wants to get in touch with me directly, I'm peter@satstreet.com. Sat Street is just the way it sounds, SATSTREET.com. It's a bit of a play on words. So obviously Bitcoin, 100 million Satoshis, Sat Street, kind of like Wall Street.
Oh, got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So we will link to all of those in the show notes.
Awesome.
And if you're a Leafs fan, you might as well say you are, because you're probably, let's face it, probably get a little bit better treatment. If you're a Habs fan, don't bring that up.
Yeah, don't bring it up.
If you send an email and he doesn't see anything about the Habs or your Leaf preferences or your NHL preferences, he knows what you are. So if you're a Leafs fan, they'll call it out. But final prediction on the Leafs. Where do they end the second round? Do we get to the playoff? We get to the playoffs.
I think if we get past the first round, we're going to the conference finals.
Conference final. I like, conference
That's what
finals.
I think. I don't think we stop at the second round. I think we either get through the first round and on to the conference finals.
I could buy that because we have so much momentum after busting through that ceiling.
Yeah. I think Murray plays.
Why are you smiling when you say we're going to the conference final?
No, because I'm smiling because I'm going to give you the prediction that you're going to hold me to, and I shouldn't even say this. I think Murray plays better than anyone expects the first half of the season, starts to falter. Samsonov turns into the number one goalie that he was projected to be when he was drafted in the first round, and we win the cup.
Whoa.
Heard it here first.
How many goals does Matthew score?
250. Yeah, 200.
Okay.
He can
We're
do
good.
it, man. That's just over 4 a game. That's
Yeah,
no problem.
No
yeah.
problem.
Peter, thank you so much. Appreciate this, man.
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Term show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.